So, what's going on here with Palantir? Well, Palantir is leaving the New York Stock Exchange for the NASDAQ. Palantir stock is gaining Friday on its plan to switch its listing to the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. Investors seem to be hoping the software company will gain from the stock getting added to the NASDAQ 100 and funds being forced to buy its shares. Kind of similar to getting added to the S&P 500, right? Because a lot of people just buy the QQQ, they just buy the NASDAQ 100, right? The company said it will transfer its stock to the NASDAQ Global Select Market, switching from the New York Stock Exchange on November 26th. So this is coming up very soon here. Palantir stock's up, obviously, as you guys see, 8+%. The stock already gained more than double this year amid excitement about its artificial intelligence capabilities and its entry into the S&P 500 in September.
The move to NASDAQ is more than just a shift in listing. It's a signal to investors that Palantir is ready for the big leagues. With the AI sector booming and their recent S&P 500 entry, Palantir is on the brink of major institutional backing, which could fuel even faster growth.
Palantir said it also expects to meet eligibility requirements for the NASDAQ 100 index, which comprises of 100 largest non-financial companies listed on the exchange. That could drive buying from funds which track the tech-heavy index. Palantir would rank the 31st in the NASDAQ 100 based upon market cap of roughly $135 billion. So now its market cap's getting even bigger, which basically means there's going to be even more forced money to buy Palantir once it gets into the NASDAQ 100, right? Which is a huge deal for the stock price, there's no doubt. Is this as big as when it got into the S&P 500? No. However, this is still a big deal. There's no debating that. Like for Palantir's stock price in the short term, and actually over the long term, it's very beneficial. Because you got to understand this, there's people that week in and week out put money into the S&P 500, people week in and week out that put money into the Qs, right, into the NASDAQ 100. And so if Palantir enters that as a 30th biggest stock or top 30 type stock, it's going to be a lot of forced money that's going to be going into Palantir over the next, we can call it, basically from when they get in at the end of November all the way through the end of the year. So the momentum in Palantir stock, as bad as I want Palantir to chill because I really don't want to sell any shares, the stock is likely going up more over the next month and a half.
With Palantir's market cap crossing $135 billion and its impending spot in the NASDAQ 100, the influx of institutional capital could drive stock prices higher. The real win here isn't just the short-term surge, but how it positions Palantir for sustained growth in the tech sector.
I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Never mind if NVIDIA comes in and rocks everybody's world, which could happen, right? And you get a lot of excitement in the tech sector as well. You get excitement in the tech sector, then you get Santa Claus rally and Palantir getting added to the queues. I mean, my gosh. Like, is a potential it's going to 70, 75 in the short term. So that's extreme. But that leads us to the next problem or question, right? Valuation, right? So here's what we're looking at. If we want to start running some numbers on Palantir, they just did a 30% growth rate, right? Let's assume they can keep that 30% growth rate up in the future here over the coming years, right? Now, net income should far outstrip the revenue growth. So let's say they could grow net income at like a 45% clip over these coming years. Now, for a company like Palantir that's kind of more SaaS related, growing 30% top line, 45% bottom line, you're going to probably pay, I would say you're going to probably pay somewhere between about a 70 and I would say about 100 PE ratio for that sort of company, right? You could even go up to a 110. So let's take it to a 110 on this baby, right? Because that's just an extraordinary growth rate, far exceeding the market.
Palantir's combination of a 30% revenue growth rate and 45% net income growth sets up a powerful outlook. With such a high growth rate, a PE ratio of 110 might seem steep now, but it's not out of the question for a company with such massive upside potential in AI and data analytics.
It's not even close. And then for a business model that's seen as stable, right, you're going to pay up for a stock like this in quite a substantial way. So we can see here, if they grow year in and year out, 30% clip, right, and 45% clip on the bottom line, and you do a PE ratio of 70 to 110, you see you get a decent compounding annual growth rate out to 2028. But you can see over the next few years, you might not get the most exciting gains, which is certainly something that could happen with Palantir, right, where this stock could still get you good gains over the next, let's say, 5 years, but over the next 2 or 3 years, the stock does absolutely nothing, and all it does is flounder, and that's a realistic potential, especially given that there's really no levers left now for stock price appreciation outside of the numbers going more insane, and let's say pushing to like if Palantir pushes to a 40% growth rate, right? So that would be a major acceleration from here, which their business is already booming. And let's say they get pushed like a 55% net income number on average, right? And I mean, then people are willing to pay like a 90 PE on this stock. Because, I mean, you know, if you're talking about those sorts of growth rates, that would just be insane. Whoops. We're going to put a 90 here, right? And then let's say up to probably about a 140 if they're actually able to continually grow at those sorts of numbers.
Palantir's current growth trajectory could lead to stable, solid gains over the next few years, but pushing for a 40% growth rate and higher net income would likely trigger a major revaluation of the stock. At that point, a PE ratio of 90 or even 140 becomes more reasonable, reflecting the continued acceleration of its business.
In future years, right? And this would be a pretty extreme situation. I mean, geez, that puts you at a pretty high P ratio. Now, let's say growth rate tops next year at like a 37% number, and then it goes down to like 32% for that year, goes down to like 29% for that year, and let's say goes down to like 27% for 2028, right? And let's say net income growth next year is like 57%, then they kind of slow down at about a 42% clip, kind of like a 39% clip, right? And then like a 37% clip. So you have slowing growth over the years, so you might be willing to pay like 90 to 140 here. Here you might go down to, let's say, 80 to like 120 PE here, right? And then let's say 2027, you might go down to like, you know, let's call it like a 75 PE to maybe 115 range here, right? And then 27, 37, we could say now you're going to pay, let's say about a 70 to about 100 PE for Palantir here. And what you're going to find is, you know, just the chances you're going to make money in the stock over, basically the chances you're going to make money in the stock after 2025, especially if the stock continues to roar higher here into the end of the year, right? The chances you're going to make substantial money in the next 2 or 3 years is pretty low. Can Palantir still be a big money maker 5 years out, 10 years out? Yes, that's still a realistic potential. But in terms of the next 2 to 3 years, if this stock keeps rolling and it goes to $70 plus, I would not expect, as a Palantir shareholder now for several years, I would not expect big gains after this year.
While Palantir might see slower growth in the next few years, this doesn't necessarily signal a decline. Instead, it could pave the way for a more sustainable, stable growth trajectory. For long-term investors, the next 5 to 10 years still hold significant promise, especially with Palantir's leadership in AI and data analytics.
Essentially, I think we could have kind of, you know, just a crazy blow off top, the Q's edition, and maybe we go 70, 75, and then I think we set up for, you know, really regardless of how great the numbers are, I think we set up for a tough 25, 26, 27 when it comes to stock price, where the company could be making tremendous progress on their top line, tremendous progress on adding more customers, and tremendous progress on the bottom line. But the stock price is not really going anywhere. That's in my opinion, a realistic potential on what could happen with Palantir after this year. So we'll see where it all shakes out. But as far as me and my positioning, like if this stock starts to push to 70 or 70 plus, I'm going to have no choice but to cash out. I would say cash out 1,000 shares. There's no choice. There's no other way out of this one. Because the setup was just going to be brutal past 2025 for the stock. I mean, absolutely brutal. And so that's what I would probably end up doing. And so that's why my hope is the stock stops going up here in the short term. But if it just keeps, you know, this happens with stocks sometimes, right? They go through these very exciting cycles. It happened to Tesla. I mean, you know, you want to know the story of Tesla. This is the exact story of Tesla, right? Tesla was a company that, you know, numbers were all going amazing. And additionally, we had all these exciting things that were going on. And we were being added to the S&P 500 and getting added to different NASDAQ indexes and getting added to all these different ETFs and those sorts of things. And it was great for Tesla. And the stock was just skyrocketing. It went to $400+ in that cycle, right? And then suddenly, you know, Tesla started to have growth weaken, right? and growth started to weaken more and more as time went on, as far as the growth rates of Tesla, right? And then we already passed kind of the hype cycles of S&P 500 and NASDAQ inclusion, all that stuff. And what do you have to show for it all these years later?
At a rich valuation, Palantir may face challenges in the short to midterm, especially if growth rates decelerate. But isn't the real opportunity still tied to its long-term innovation in AI and data analytics? Could that be enough to overcome potential stagnation and drive value in the years to come?
You know, this stock is at the same price it was back, over 3 years ago. And think about the progress the indexes have made over the last 3 years. And this stock is the same price it was over 3 years ago. And it's still significantly off those all-time highs that were 3 years ago, right? The all-time highs were made in November 2021 at well over $400. And we're still a long way from that $400 level. So, I mean, we could be looking at 3.5, 4 years, if not 5 years, between when we reach that last all-time high to the next one. And so that's when I talk about with Palantir, where Palantir stock could, obviously have this blow-off top happen here, let's call it in the next month or two, and then we set ourselves up into a really tough situation after that, where, the stock just kind of doesn't do anything for several years. And that's no fun to go through that cycle, right? Because it's one thing to say, okay, maybe the stock doesn't do anything for a year, maybe the stock doesn't do anything for a few quarters, a few months, that's fine. But what about if a stock doesn't do anything for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, like Tesla stock, right? And that's definitely the potential I see for Palantir here, and that's what makes it like, dang, man, I might have to take some more profits on this one if this baby goes to like 70, 75, like, it's just. And then after that, then I just hold the rest of the shares for a long term, kind of like I've done with Tesla. So tough decisions, man. And that's some of the toughest decisions you're ever going to have in the stock market. As somebody who's been playing this game for 16 years now, some of the hardest decisions you ever have are a situation where you love a stock a lot, you really don't want to sell it, but it's just priced in so many years of future growth that you start to become, you start to like look at it and you're like this stock is priced so ridiculous that I have to take some profits. And it looks like we're starting to approach those sorts of levels in Palantir, especially if this one continues to push. So we'll see what happens. But if we push this baby to 70 or 75, don't be surprised if I cash another 1,000 shares or 2,000 shares and then just hold 3,000 or 4,000 shares in the public account for the super long term, right? Which might not be the most exciting next few years in regards to the numbers, right? So that's kind of what's going on there.
Palantir's shift from the New York Stock Exchange to the NASDAQ marks a significant milestone in its trajectory. The move signals to investors that the company is ready for even bigger institutional backing, potentially driving up stock prices in the short term due to the influx of forced investments from funds tracking the NASDAQ 100. With a growing market cap and its AI-driven capabilities, Palantir is well positioned for continued growth. However, while the excitement around this move and the potential short-term gains is palpable, there are valid concerns about the sustainability of this momentum. The high valuation, driven by strong revenue and net income growth, could lead to a plateau in the coming years, as we've seen with other high-flying tech stocks. Despite the long-term promise of Palantir's leadership in AI and data analytics, the stock may face a tough road ahead post-2025, with growth potentially slowing and price stagnation becoming a realistic scenario.
I would like to give a big thank you to Palantir Bite Size for featuring me on the channel here today and all you do for the Palantir community. I've been fortunate to build up a tremendous Palantir community inside my private group's Discord chat. We identified Palantir as an unbelievable opportunity back in 2022. Many of us capitalized and have now made thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars on this stock. We built out one of the strongest Palantir followings and communities you will find out there. If you would like to apply to join our community, then check out the description area down there. You'll be able to click on that link and apply to join us. You also get access to all of my premium course curriculums, as well as that private group's Discord chat and exclusive videos from me. So that will be the link in the description area down there.